Howdy, folks. I'm Mark. Thanks for joining me for this short talk about video games because you listen to Quick Place. Let's get right into it. None of what I'm getting into here is new or even all that original, but I'm just publicly staking my claim, adding my voice to the cause. In that, when I review a game, I have switched from a 10-point rating scale to a 5-star rating system, and I think you should too. I understand that I am not a professional reviewer or a journalist, but I do have a podcast on video games that has been running for almost 3 years, so that counts for something. But really, I enjoy thinking critically on the games I play, and I'm interested in how my critical assessment lines up with what others think as well of that game. And so I will review them unprofessionally on the GG app and just in my own notes. And even in GG, I have updated all my ratings to get rid of half stars, only whole stars for me now, because the 10-point rating scale is pretty much bankrupt at this point. What we're trying to figure out when we review a game, when we read a review, is simply, is the game worth buying? Or simply, is it worth playing? Is it worth recommending that others buy it and slash or play it? And that can be pretty easily done with very few data points, and specifically 5 data points. So our key approach to this, or one key approach to this, is that the 5-star game is not a perfect game, but it is an excellent game. So if you're still on this train that no game should get a perfect score because no game is perfect, it is time to get over yourself. It's true, there are no perfect games, but if a perfect score, quote unquote, is achievable on your grading scale, that's a useless stat. Just throw it out. You don't see that take much anymore anyway, but just in case you're still stuck in your ways there, it's time to move on. But because you can avoid that entirely with a 5-star rating scale. So if a game would get a 9 or a 10 on a 10-point scale, that's a 5-star game. By the point that a game is a 9 out of 10, you're going to believe it's worth playing and you're willing to recommend it. So it's 5 stars. A 5-star game is excellent. A 4-star game is great. A 3-star game is good. A 2-star game is mediocre, or I like to call it meh sometimes. And a 1-star game, that's just bad. That's a bad game. 1 star. You could also think of it as a letter grade, which conveniently that's also a 5-point scale. And A, B, C, D, F is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You don't want to start throwing pluses and minuses in there. Just keep it simple. That helps lower the bar a bit for giving an excellent game a high score. You don't have to sweat over a game if it's excellent but not perfect. You can just give it an A. You're not giving it A pluses. Is it worthy of an A? But personally, I kind of prefer ascribing the terminology of excellent, great, good, mediocre, and bad. Plenty of other professional outlets use that terminology kind of like that. I adapted mine from IGN, but my terminology doesn't cleanly match up with IGN's 10-point scale because a 5-star system shouldn't line up with a 10-point scale. By default, the temptation is to double a score on a five-star scale in order to fix it to this 10-point scale. That's the way that Metacritic does it. If an outlet like Eurogamer or The Guardian gives a game 4 stars, Metacritic treats it like an 80 or an 8. I think that's unfair and disingenuous to the 5-star system because the 10-point scale has suffered from inflation to the point where half the scale is useless. Most games worth reviewing are somewhere between a 6, 7, 8, or 9 on a 10-point scale. And those are the scores that actually matter on this 10-point scale. And really, it's 7, 8, and 9 are doing most of the work. 6 is a game that's played for the minor leagues, and a 5 is just bad at that point. If a game is a 5 out of 10, that should be average, but it's not. Later and I had an episode a while back on 5 out of 10 games. It's just bad. You don't really need to go any lower at that point. So instead, the games that score 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is really nearly every game that gets reviewed, those are your 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5-star games. It doesn't work cleanly. I think the categories do get a little more vague than that. I think that's important. But if that helps kind of ease the transition for you as you go into this way, you can think of it that way. But also raises the question of what about a 10 out of 10? For one, like I said before, nines are nearly there. You can call that a five-star game. And truly a 10 out of 10 game will and should get additional praise beyond the review score. But hang on a minute. I'll get back there. We'll talk about tens later on. Five or these above and beyond five-star games. Because again, five, six, seven, eight, nine, those are the scores that ultimately matter. And specifically, seven, eight, and nine are the ones that hold the most weight in our whole cultural mindset. So, for example, I ran Metacritic Golf over 2024 last year, where we guessed the Metacritic scores for major releases. And over the four quarters, we guessed the scores of 45 games that released in 2024. 39 of those scored from a 70 to a 90. And that is 87% of all the games. And that's not to say 87% of all games released in 2024 score between 70 to 90. But for Metacritic Golf, I was focused on the more significant releases, the ones that we're all going to be talking about. But I did the math anyway. When you do consider every game with an entry on Metacritic for 2024, there were 461 games released in 2024 with Metacritic scores. Only 8 of those scored above a 90, 91 or better. That's 1.7% of all these games. 95 of them scored under a 70, or about 21%. And that running total means that 78% of every 2024 game with a Metacritic score is sitting at a 70 through a 90, or 78% of 2024 games collectively received a 7, 8, or 9. That's almost four-fifths of all these games. And going deeper down, only 25 scored under a 60, which means that 93% of all those games really were received at least a 60 to a 90, which also means that 93% of 2024 games that are notable enough to receive a Metacritic score fall pretty easily into these 5 data points of a 5-star system. And that's not even considering the games that would get a 1-star. Only 2 games in 2024 came in at under a 50, which means that 99.6% of every 2024 game on Metacritic has a Metacritic score that starts with a 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. We can all move to this 5-star rating system because half of all possible scores on Metacritic don't matter. Metacritic scores under 50 might as well not exist. If you've reached a 59, just stamp as a failure at that point anyway, too. That's already a 1-star. That's an F. That's not worth playing. And as you see the light and make this transition with me into this 5-star rating system, it's going to feel a little brutal. You don't want to give a game 3 stars because you don't want to give it 6 out of 10. You're not giving it 6 out of 10. You're giving it 3 stars. It's different. It's a good game. It gets a C. C's get degrees. A 2-star game is mediocre. That's not a 4 out of 10. There's as much bad about the game as there is good. Or it's kind of fun, but there's just something glaring that prohibits that fun. I understand this. I've been ascribing 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is a little bit different, but I think that's important. And with these 2-star games, I do understand that's where a 10-point scale makes a little more sense in a 5-star system because 2 is not half of 5. But like we discussed, the majority of games worth reviewing are in the 7, 8, or 9 range. So let's make those the most important data points, even if that means sacrificing true mathematics around it. But there's so much subjectivity in critique and reviewing. It is a fool's errand to have this stuff match up with a satisfying, predictable math. And it never has anyway, because that's why 78% of games are sevens, 8s, or 9s. That's all we're looking at anyway. And a 2-star is just the purgatory category for games that are mediocre. But then, how do you then differentiate the truly amazing games that would normally get a 10 if 9s are getting 5 stars anyway? I told you I get back here, but you just got to talk about them. You make your lists, you rank your games, you talk about what makes them special, Yeah, add a little extra star if it makes you feel good. You're not going to forget about these games. These are the games that will get the praise they deserve. And they deserve praise because you're going to give it to them when you talk to others about it or when you write down your thoughts. You can also create when you're creating a top 10 list or whatnot, and that should be a different process than rating a game. Obviously, those are related, but a personal list requires more precision, whereas a universal ranking system doesn't and shouldn't. The same goes for the other end, the worst games of all time, which I do think you should spend less time talking about those, but morbid curiosity compels us to rank the worst of the worst. And that's all that the scores 1 through 5 on a 10-point scale are good for, just driving home the point more that this game is bad. In reality, I don't want to play a game that everyone gives a 5 out of 10 any more than I want to play a game that everyone gives a 3 out of 10. In that, I don't want to play either of them. That they're just not worth my time. Um, and another thing to wrestle through is how then would websites like Metacritic or OpenCritic work? And that just simply they would work the same way that Yelp does, or Google reviews, or Amazon reviews. All average all these scores and round to the second decimal point. So you'll get Metacritic scores like 4.83 or 3.32, and what that would tell you is most people gave this game 5 stars, or most people gave this game 3 stars, but a minority gave it 4 stars. And because it's a smaller number, we're much more inclined to round out that decimal point to the nearest whole number. And that creates a much more productive conversation to argue over whether a game is a 3 star or a 4 star game instead of arguing whether it's a 76 or a 77. Um, but it also becomes then the spread of review scores will become more important and a little easier to digest. So a game that scores a 4.0 by receiving an equal number of 5 star and 3 star reviews tells you something different than a 4.0 game that with a bunch of 4 star reviews. That can tell you if a game is more niche or if it's more universal. And a 5 star system makes this more natural and easier to wrap your head around. Metacritic kind of already does this with their positive mixed negative bars that's in these entries. But this is an area where more data, splitting out the bar into 5 sections for 5 stars instead of the current 3 sections for positive, mixed, negative, that can tell an interesting story in how this game was received by critics. So you can kind of already do this with the 10-point system, the way that Metacritic has done it, but having everything be on a 5 star system all the way down just streamlines it. And then also, what do the actual reviewers do? These professional critics, how do they approach this when you compare and contrast games, when these categories become bigger? How do you make sure the best of the best rises to the top? And for one, they make lists and they push them in other ways besides reviews. A ton of sites and publications do this already. This is nothing new. You got your game of the year list. You've got different podcasts talking about the games they enjoy. But two, it's all still the same. We're just trying to figure out what games are worth playing. If a game is especially good, then they'll talk about it. And three, ultimately, this will necessitate actually reading reviews, which I don't do often enough myself. I can so quickly scroll to the end to find out what number a game got. But if we turn these numbers into larger categories, these larger camps, because I mean they're already that way anyway. It's 7, 8s, and 9s. We're not treating the 10-point scale like a 10-point scale. We're treating it like shorthand. So let's just make the shorthand make more sense and more meaningful. And ultimately, saying a game is a 4-star game is less precise than saying it's an 8 out of 10, even though it's going that way anyway. Because a 5-star rating system demands nuance, where nuance has already become necessary. It demands thoughtful analysis and big boy words to communicate that analysis. And then you're already having a better conversation than arguing over a number that has become a distraction. And that makes it worth it most of all. There you go. So come join me. I am now a 5-star rating guy. I think it's important. I think it helps better conversation. So wrapping up here, what am I playing? I am playing Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga. Well, thank you all for listening in. You can follow us on the major podcasting services or on YouTube. You can press all the good buttons there. If you enjoy the conversation, give it 5 stars. There you go. It's right there for you. This is all set up for that. But you can find us on the proper socials, Quick Play Pod, and let us know what's your rating system. Do you use 10-point scale? Do you 5 stars? Do you have something else? I'd be curious to know if there's something I'm not even considering. But that's all the time we have for today. Thanks. Bye.